everybody, and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Over the course of my trading, I've been early to a number of different asset classes that gone up over 100x and some of them over even 1000x. Moving into this cycle, there's a few that I've bought into that I have a lot of belief do the same type of gains, and I wanted to share with you guys an ecosystem that I think is very primed going into this year. And with 2025 shaping up to be the biggest year of our cycle, this is one that I really want to break down because I know you don't want to miss out on all of the profit that's going to be generated very soon. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. If you find any value in it, please do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty everybody, here we are jumping into today's video, and as you guys can see, ETH is currently working on a breakout. Same level that we've been at a number of different times. I'm on a weekly time frame, and we've got about 4.5 days to see how this closes. If we close above this resistance here, I think it's a sure sign ETH is headed to $7,000 plus, and this is the point where we're going to see ETH really start to outprice everybody and, you know, really generate a lot of FOMO moving forward from here. We're already seeing the institutions flocking to buy it. They're copying MicroStrategy, where they're basically just going out, accumulating as many ETH as they can. When their stock price goes up because of their profit that they can churn, they can show that profit every single week or month, whenever it is, then overall the stock price starts to pump with it. They can issue more stocks, they can buy more of the token, and the cycle repeats. That's what we're starting to see with ETH. So as this is starting to happen, I thought it was unique that if we're looking at a breakout and a retest here, I wanted to share with you guys the companies that actually own the most ETH, because I think that these are going to be the front runners for where we could see a lot of growth potential moving forward into this cycle. Now right off the bat, if we come over here and take a look at strategic ETH reserve.xyz and we look at some of these entities and how many ETH they're actually holding, we can see that Bitmine Immersion Tech actually holds the most at 300,000 Ethereum. We have Sharplink Gaming at 280.6 thousand Ethereum. And then the Ethereum Foundation. Isn't it funny that the ETH Foundation isn't even the biggest holder of Ethereum? They've sold a lot of them over the course of the last 10 years. Now, the ETH Foundation owns 239,000 tokens. And what I thought was really interesting is if you come one below at the 4th ranked spot, the PulseChain Sacrifice Wallet owns 166.3 thousand Ethereum, which is more than Coinbase even owns, the exchange, more than Genosis, more than the US government, more than Lido DAO, and then more than so many other markets out there. I thought that that was a really crazy thing because, in my opinion, we've already seen what MicroStrategy has been able to do with the profit of Bitcoin. We're going to see the same thing happen with ETH, probably on a bigger scale because people feel like ETH is a little more undervalued, so they rush to accumulate that one instead. And as this becomes a narrative, what actually owns the most ETH, when ETH starts to shoot up to $7, $10, $15, $20,000 per token, that's really where we're going to see a lot of eyeballs starting to be like, well, this company owns this much, these guys are serious, they can make any sort of move in the market that they want, and I think just that alone is a selling point. So for the rest of this video, I want to talk about PulseChain. I want to talk about these tokens in the ecosystem that I think are going to give us life-changing returns. Like I've stated, guys, I've been early to Solana. I bought it at 60 cents in the last cycle. I bought Phantom Network at 8 cents. It did over 200x. I bought Terra Luna at 32 cents. That went over 1000x when I bought it. So I've been early to a number of ecosystems before they blew up. And with this cycle, I'm confident I'm going to do the exact same thing over again. I've already kind of accumulated which ones I thought were really safe picks. And I've talked a lot about PulseChain, and the reason why is because it's my dark horse candidate for that. I've always talked a lot about why I thought PulseChain was going to outperform a lot of tokens. And the more that I've invested over here, the more that I've played with the chain, the more confident I am in that. And so for the rest of this video, I wanted to map out some of the core tokens and then give you guys one of my favorite low caps in the ecosystem, because I'm telling you guys, you can continue to doubt me, but when you see this ecosystem blow up, you're going to really be pissed at yourself that you didn't get at least some exposure. Because in my 9 years, and now going into my 3rd bull run I've traded, I have a lot of confidence this is one that you want to keep your eye on moving forward. So starting first, we're going to go with PulseChain token. This is the token of PulseChain. It's got $240 million fully diluted valuation. $1.3 million 24-hour volume, almost $5 million in total liquidity. So there is plenty of liquidity, there's plenty of volume, and really PulseChain has more liquidity and volume than a lot of other chains out there. So people that doubt on or hate on Richard Hart, I understand. I also think he's kind of an idiot. I think he's obnoxious. But truthfully, he created PulseChain and the DEX of PulseX and, you know, bonded all of his tokens in liquidity with each other to create the perfect storm where if one pumps, they all pump and feed into each other at the same time. So the beauty of PulseX, which is the DEX on PulseChain, is notice over here, well, so this is wrapped Pulse against D.I.Y. Imagine if this liquidity pool was actually wrapped Pulse and PulseX. So if that was the liquidity pool, if the PulseChain token went up 100%, so let's say this token pumps. Wow, 100% is only here. That's crazy. The gains on this are huge. Holy crap. Almost 9x just to the all-time high. So if this just goes up 100%, which is like barely past our resistance level, if this goes up 100%, and it's paired with PulseX, which it is, it's paired with Hex, it's paired with PulseX, it's paired with all of these tokens in the ecosystem. If one side of the liquidity pool doubles in price, just because of the math of PulseX, the other token will do a 4x in price. So that's the beauty of PulseChain. They're all liquidity bonded with each other. There's PulseChain, there's PulseX, there's Hex, and then there's Incentive Token. All four of these are the core tokens of PulseChain that Richard Hart created. And he perfectly created the DEX of PulseChain to basically act where if there's any liquidity that comes into this market, even if one side, you know, is the only one that benefits from the new liquidity, if somebody comes in and they say, all right, I'm going to provide liquidity on Pulse, I'm not going to use the other ones. Just by them providing liquidity in PulseChain, it's going to pump all of his other tokens at the same time. And so like I said, if one of them goes up 100% in value, then the other ones go up 4x in value because the value of the liquidity pool just doubled on that side. And this is a cycle that feeds into itself. So when we're talking about PulseChain token going up to its all-time high at 9.5x almost, the amount of upside that's going to be generated, the amount of times the price of these other tokens is going to go up 4x, it's going to be insane. And so that's why I tell you guys, this ecosystem was perfectly created to pump hard. So if you have these weird biases of Richard Hart, I also had them. I also called him a scammer in the last cycle. I now realize that there's just no truth with that. He already beat the SEC. He's already done everything that he needed to. Even Roger Ver is sitting in like jail, I'm pretty sure right now, or at least he's on bond for all kinds of stuff. So the fact that he hasn't even beat the SEC yet and Richard Hart did, I mean, in my opinion, that's kind of the go-ahead that, hey, this guy didn't scam anybody. And when we're talking about how many Ethereum the PulseChain SAC wallet holds and what they can do with that Ethereum, it only takes a tiny amount of that Ethereum to go into the liquidity pool of one of these tokens, and the tokens are going to 4x in price. So when we're talking about ETH being worth $10,000 and $20,000 per token, the type of movement that can do to this ecosystem, let alone just the sheer selling point of, hey, look how many Ethereum PulseChain owns. That in and of itself is a huge selling point in my eyes on an institutional level, right? They can loan those. They can, you know, give everybody else yield. PulseChain can be a complete DeFi powerhouse, and that's what people are failing to realize. And it just exists because of the sheer volume and supply of Ethereum that they hold. So when I look at PulseChain, it's not my favorite token of the ecosystem because it underperforms everything else. We had this big fake out. It made a new all-time low. But it looks like we're kind of putting in some type of double bottom formation, which if we get back above this high right here, it's going to be putting us kind of at the decision point where we're going to be right hugging that downtrending resistance. But if we can get a breakout of both of these levels, get outside of this downtrending resistance, in my opinion, PulseChain's price is going to fly all the way up to this range high and all the way up to these prior all-time highs relatively quickly. You know, what I've always viewed the price of PulseChain and the price of PulseX and all of these other ones, what I thought was going to happen with them is basically this. If we come over here and actually take a look at the PulseX chart, this is going to make a little bit more sense. Now, I've gone ahead and overlaid a prior cycle from one that I traded a long time ago that I'm excited to share with you because this is exactly what I think happens to PulseChain. This is exactly what I think happens to PulseX. Now keep in mind, we're looking at the price of PulseX, and the reason why is because I prefer buying PulseX over PulseChain. I wouldn't buy Pulse. This is not the one I would buy. I would go and buy PulseX. Even though it's got a higher market cap, it outperforms PulseChain's token price, and I think it's going to continue to do that. Notice how PulseChain made a new all-time low over in here. Well, PulseX has done nothing but uptrend and hold support. It's ascending support throughout, and it's kind of just consolidating in this triangle formation. Now, what it reminds me of is early XRP. There's almost no difference in this cycle, in my opinion. You know, when I look at both of these setups, it's the same thing playing out all over again. And what are the similarities between PulseChain and XRP? Well, back in the early days of XRP, it was known as the banker's token. It was the biggest scam around because you were anti-crypto. You're actually benefiting the banks. You're working with them, partnering with them, and all of that stuff. So it was the most hated token back in the day. And even in the last cycle, it was really hated. I think Hex was the most hated in the last cycle. But, you know, look at what Hex did. It went up 10,000x. So this is what I say, guys. You got to ignore all of these dumb people in the market. They're going to tell you one thing, and then the opposite is going to happen. They're going to tell you it's a scam, and then it pumps harder than everything. And like I've stated, I've been early to a number of the best returning assets every cycle, and this is one that I've got a lot of confidence is going to do the same type of stuff. And what I find funny is in the same way that XRP was so hated back in the day, you know, PulseChain and PulseX and Hex are the same situation now. Now that Richard Hart's beaten the SEC, you know, I think it's really clear skies ahead as this thing starts to send it into price discovery. But the same cycle between the listing pump, the full retrace back down, you have the lower high that sets in, then you have this big correction back down, and then the market just kind of goes sideways for a long time before it finally starts to pump, right? And we're just at the very bottom, in my opinion. We're right here before this move comes in. And the way it worked with XRP is it went straight into a new all-time high. What if we ended up seeing the same thing with PulseX, like a big pump like this, and it kind of corrects back down and then just does that? I mean, quite literally, this is what I expect is going to happen. Like, I'm not kidding at all. I really think that this is the type of stuff that's going to happen. And with all of the sheer money that is backing PulseX, that's backing PulseChain, that is backing Hex, and all of the in-between, you're going to see more liquidity on this than a lot of the other chains. There already is more liquidity than a lot of the other chains. There's enough liquidity for you to be able to trade and make profit. But there's also, like, not a lot of supply that exists, and there's not that much liquidity, right? Like, don't get me wrong, when we're talking about all these other chains, there's some out there that have massive amounts of liquidity versus PulseChain. But when we're talking about the top, after, like, the top 5 to 6 chains, there's not that much liquidity throughout. And so PulseChain is one of the top ranked coins with liquidity, or the chains as a whole. So when we're talking about what happens when all of the price shocks sets in, there's not a big amount of supply that exists because most of the supply is pretty much just sitting there locked up in Richard Hart's wallet. So there's not really that much that exists for people to go out and accumulate. So what we end up seeing is as everybody rushes in to buy these tokens, there becomes a supply shock where there's not enough tokens to go around, and the price just absolutely starts skyrocketing. It's the same thing that happened with Hex. The whole reason Hex pumped so hard was because Richard Hart owned 90% of the supply, and he had it in a wallet that he didn't sell. So, you know, everybody was just basically fighting for 10% of the supply. So Hex did a 10,000x in value because it was so easy to move the price. It didn't take very much money to come into it. So he did the same thing with PulseX. He did the same thing with PulseChain. He did the same thing with Hex. All of these are set up in the exact same way, where they're perfectly created, where if one side goes up 100% in value, the other tokens that are bonded with it are going to go up 4x in value. And he did all of this, and then he also has a tiny amount of supply that exists for Hex, a tiny amount of supply that exists for PulseX, a tiny amount of supply that exists for PulseChain, and the second anybody starts buying it with even just like 50K, you're going to start to see the values of these things jumping up really, really high. So it's not going to take very much money to drive the prices of these, and what little the prices and what little money that comes in that does drive the price, since they're all bonded with each other, they're all going to pump together at the same time. So that's the beauty of this ecosystem. It's perfectly created to make you money. So if you're somebody that has listened up to this point and you're still not going to bridge and buy any over here, you're going to miss out on a huge opportunity, and that's just as simple as I can go. But I'm telling you guys, I really think this is a unique one that you should look at, bridge some money over, throw a few $100 around, because I don't think it takes very much money in some of these tokens to see a huge impact in price. You know, Hex, this is P-Hex, the actual PulseChain version, and it's already broken out of its downtrend. It's retested it. It's starting to get new volume coming in here. Everything we need to see pretty much to start playing out for new all-time highs has happened. And this is really our first impulse. We've only had one Elliott wave impulse. We had 5 waves up, ABC back down, Now that we've broken out, I honestly think that this thing's going to go pretty quickly into a new all-time high. And it'll do something like this, very, very fast. You know, this is actually fairly slow. It's going to start going vertical, and all of these will. It doesn't matter which one you're looking at, whether it's PulseX, but, you know, if PulseX does the XRP thing, it is going to kind of go vertical and do the same sort of pattern. Now, my favorite one in the ecosystem is actually Incentive Token, and this was the yield farming token that you got for providing liquidity and farming it inside of the PulseX ecosystem, or the chain, or the DEX, I should say. So this one's been my favorite because I look at it, I see a perfect setup. So much volume. Volume precedes price. Anytime you have a bunch of volume at the bottom of a trend, means that the price is going to go up, basically, to put it simply. So we have all of this volume. The price is massively down from the all-time high, but as PulseChain token has made a new all-time low, this thing even held support. So the fact that it showed strength versus the other ones, I mean, it really does give me a lot of confidence to keep buying it. It has a perfect Elliott wave cycle. Wave 1, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. Then we had this ABC back down. Just kind of trended sideways. This is literally a Wyckoff accumulation. Low, second low, and retest. This is just completing a Wyckoff. So what happens is you make this run, it breaks the range high, which is here. This is called the markup phase of the Wyckoff, and then it basically just goes up. So when you're talking about this thing, and the ROI you'd be seeing, just to the range high that it made in 2024 is a 6.5x. If it goes to the prior all-time high, that's almost a 50x. If it goes to 100x, that's $155. That's not that far into new all-time highs. And with all of this volume that's came down here, with the lack of supply that exists on chain, I honestly think that this thing is the dark horse and could actually outperform all of the other tokens in the ecosystem. That's why this one is my favorite. It's my biggest holding on the PulseChain ecosystem. I really have a lot of confidence in Incentive Token specifically. But like I said, guys, if Inc. goes up to its prior high, just right over in here, and does a 6.5x in value, keep in mind that this liquidity pool is Inc. versus Pulse. So if the Inc. liquidity pool goes up 100%, it basically doubles in value against the PulseChain side, you're going to see the PulseChain token go up 4x in value. So if this thing goes up 6.5x, you know, I don't know what the exact ratio would be into the liquidity pool, right? But if the liquidity pool is going to rise by, let's say, 2x, you know, the price of PulseChain would do a 4 or an 8x in price. So that's the beauty of all of this. When one pumps, they all feed into each other, and that pumps the other ones, and when they pump, that feeds back into the same ones, and it's just a cycle that goes up. So when the real supply shock happens, when people rush to bridge over here and start buying the tokens, and we start to see them pump, and there's not supply going around in the same way that it happened with Hex in the last cycle, I'm telling you guys right now, you're going to see that supply shock, but it's going to happen across 4 different tokens. And not only 4 tokens, but the one I want to talk about for the rest of this video is the low cap. And this one actually shares, it's the #2 biggest liquidity pool token outside of SolidX that's actually bonded with Inc. So when you're looking at all of the tokens with the most liquidity with Inc., Doubt's #2 at $2.5 million of LP with Inc. So this thing has been going up, but it's only at 5 million fully diluted. So it's really at just the beginning of a trend. It looks exactly like some of these beginning cycles that I've traded. That's what I've kind of mapped out right here before they started going parabolic. But like I stated, if Inc. just goes up here to $10, which is a 5.5x, it's still way below its prior all-time high. Then at that point, the value of Doubt token, which shares $2.5 million in liquidity, you know, if that goes up 6x in value or 6.5x, then that would be a 26x in price for Doubt token. So I really think that this is the next thing that we need to pay attention for. If you're trading on PulseChain, everything is bonded with these core tokens, and the bonding works multiple ways. It doesn't matter which token it is. If one side of the liquidity pool doubles in value, the other token will 4x in price. So it can be PulseChain, it could be Hex, it could be PulseX, or it could be anybody's random coin that they make themselves. In this case, this is Doubt. Doubt has the second most liquidity bonded of any altcoin on the PulseChain ecosystem with Inc. For those reasons, I honestly anticipate the Inc. is going to run really quickly to this range high, which is going to pull a 5.5x. And if that happens, this token is going to do a 26x in price. So over the course of the whole cycle, can you imagine what Doubt token does if we run all the way up to a 50x in price? I don't know what the math is because I dropped out of high school, but if you guys can comment what that math would be, if a 6.5x is 26x in price, what is a 50x? what would that be in price? But that'd be probably hundreds of X's. So in my eyes, a lot of opportunity is actually buying some of the altcoins that are bonded with these other tokens, because if those are going to pump super hard, if we're going to see PulseX, do an XRP fractal from 2017 cycle, then all of the tokens bonded with PulseX are going to do the same thing. So all of these meme coins and these low caps that are bonded with these tokens as well, they're also going to follow the same pattern. So I wanted to break down this video for you guys with all of the ETH that the PulseChain Sacrifice wallet holds. I honestly think that this is going to be one of the most insane pumps because of just the sheer narrative alone. On an institutional level, they own more of these tokens that the institutions are trying to buy. So I think there's just a lot of profit potential to be generated here. With the way that PulseX works and liquidity giving, one-sided liquidity pool doubles, the other one 4X's. You have a unique opportunity where it's kind of the perfect ecosystem to make profit off of pumping tokens. So if you guys want to be able to check this out, if you want to be able to bridge over, if you want to be able to swap on a DEX, whatever you need to do to be able to accumulate these tokens, contract addresses, how to set up the RPC network inside of your MetaMask wallet, I'll link it in the description below. But I appreciate you guys. I want to hear you guys' comments about this. Like I've stated, and I've been early to a number of these good returning assets. This is one of those opportunities that I see playing out in the same way. I'm invested into other ecosystems, obviously, other tokens. I've talked about them on the channel. But this is another one of those ecosystems that Richard Hart perfectly designed to pump, the way that the liquidity giving works. And with them owning so many Ethereum, I just really don't think you can overlook it. There's a lot of narratives brewing, a lot of volume over here, and I think you should bridge over. So if you want to, links are in the description for everything that you're going to need to set up. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.